but talking to me, which makes no sense because I'm not her niece,
Right.
because we're just Thetans.
You're just
so it's like confusing. Like, why is she singling me out to talk to me for hours every time? Because she's not my aunt, but acting like my aunt.
She's talking out of both sides of her mouth.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a barrier that creates an inability to actually bond and know someone, even if you're blood tied to them and want to love them. Like, at some point, that's going to build up like a powder keg. I understand completely. I don't understand experiencing that, but I can understand what you're talking about. Yeah. So during this time period, though, too, like you were mentioning early on in the podcast, you know, when you were a child, David and would pick you up and take you to hang out with Shelly. But when you were in Florida, you had said a little bit ago, like, if he was coming through, you'd have to eat in the bathroom or something to avoid him when people in your family were in trouble. But did you have any real prolonged interactions with him at all during that time period?
Right. So the time when I would have to go in the bathroom, that I would only have to avoid him because I was in trouble. But they were actually in Florida for many of those years when I was there. And when they were in town, my Aunt Shelly would bring me into the office and talk to me for hours.
For hours?
Yeah.
About what?
She would mostly talk to me about, like, you know, my training. She would talk to me about health stuff. She would talk to me about girl stuff. And so the organization I was in was called the Commodore's Messenger Organization. And L. Ron Hubbard is the Commodore, and we were people, and we were supposed to be his messengers anyways, even though he was dead, I don't know. It's too much.
I feel you.
Anyway, so she had been a messenger from a really young age. Like, she would always tell me I was a messenger from when I was 9 years old. And she would sort of always try to mentor me. And, like, I don't know, like, she was almost like a mother figure. Like my mom, like, she would talk to me about my period. She would talk to me about health. She would talk to me about all those sorts of things. She would even say things like, you know, in my experience, lots of boys marry girls in CMO, but then they take advantage of them and they use them to get to a higher level. It was kind of weird. I was like, is she talking about Dave? Like, I don't know. It was, you know, or she would talk to me about my aunts and my grandma. And so, like, it was like she was family, but I also knew that if I pissed her off, then it wasn't like, it wasn't like I had some kind of special treatment. And then Dave would come in and out of the office and he would show me stuff, make jokes, and he would, like, ask me questions. He would, like, complain about people, but it was, like, nice and friendly. But at that time I called him sir. And, you know, and I knew how he was. I would see him getting angry at other people. I mean, even the times when I visited my mom in Florida, like, you know, before I went to Florida for good, we would, like, watch movies. We went, like, did, like, mini golf together. Like, I mean, those were like seeing my mom and how they lived and how nice their rooms were and how well they got treated. That was something that, compared to how it was at the ranch, made me be like, oh, I want to be a Sea Org member. I want to be an executive in Scientology because they get to do all this fun stuff. But I didn't realize, you know, they were being treated much differently than the average Sea Org member.
Well, I was going to be asking you, I think you kind of just answered. I just want to make sure, you know, learning basic things about, you know, what it is to be a woman and all the things that go with that, and learning about boys and natural urges you have. It seems like Shelly was your main resource there. I mean, because she's also, we've talked about it throughout this conversation, but you didn't have really a lot of people older than you. So it seems like the few times where you were able to, in an extended environment, be able to talk with someone who's older than you, you were kind of lapping that up, you know, getting whatever you could get.
For sure, but the actual people that I was talking to were my friends. Like, those were the people who I would talk to about boys or my period. Shelly I would talk with her about that too, but I'd be like, yeah, I got my period 2 years ago, but thanks for talking about it now.
How did your friends, like, where did your friends learn it from if they grew up in the ranch too?
I mean, I actually don't know, but, like, if, like, when I got my period.
Divine intervention.
Like, when I got my period, like, that's who I, like, borrowed a pad from or a tampon. Like, and then eventually, or, like, we would go to the store together and, like, we were, like, shy to buy, like, tampons or whatever. And so I would, like, put it in her basket or something, or they were older and so they didn't care. But like that's who, like, so Shelly would talk with me about it. I never talked to my mom about it, and she would talk about health and things like that. And it felt motherly because she was
Yes.
somebody who was my mom's age and somebody who I knew since I was a baby. But like it wasn't really like, it's not like what I'm doing with my daughter right now. Like
Yeah.
my friends were the ones who were there every month when I got my period. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it the right way. I mean,
Right.
man, that's wild. So, would you say that you had been saying that some people would say like, "Oh, Shelly can be nasty" and stuff like that, but like did you like her, or was it just like a nice escape to be able to talk with someone for hours, regardless of who they were?
It was definitely a nice escape to be able to talk to someone for a few hours, but also I liked her a lot. Yeah. But also, like, she would, so looking back, I thought that, I guess like she would say things to me like she would tell me when I was with her, like, no, like she would be like I guess she would be like complaining about my dad and how he would like always send me letters, or he would like try to call me all the time, and she would be like, "Oh, he's always been obsessed with family, but she would be like, but no Thetan is really the parent of another Thetan. So he just has a
Oh, she
weird
bought it.
obsession with that." And she would tell me that, or she would say things like that, and I thought she was being nice and helpful, but really she was kind of talking shit about my dad. And or like she would like, I don't know, say things about my mom. Like I would tell her that I was like kind of really worried and upset that my mom was on the RPF, and I felt bad for her because she had been in such a high executive position and then kind of like got busted. And I remember when I first found out about it, all these people were like, "Well, we're not friends with her anymore. I don't have respect for her." And I thought that would be really hard for my mom to experience. And I like that part of it hurt me more than not being able to see her. And Shelly would be like, "Well, she always bragged about being the strongest woman on the base." And she'd be like, "And she's doing fine." Like she would just kind of like, and like she would just say critical things about my parents that at the time felt like they were trying to be comforting. But looking back, it's kind of messed up. But then I guess it's kind of a little bit sweet too, because I think she maybe was jealous that they were my parents, and on some level I feel like she wanted to be my parent. Like so I don't know, it's just kind of the whole thing's like kind of messed up and mixed feelings, and I don't really know what to think about it. It's all just messed up.
Do you think, of course it is, but do you think that some of it could have been her, how do I want to say this? Well, maybe it could have been like she's also trying to intentionally brainwash you. Or...
But it's not considered brainwashing to her.
Right, it's not.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's the second thing. You tell me if this is the second thing I'm going to bring up here. Or she's so brainwashed that she can't see that she's doing it because she's tortured into drinking the Kool-Aid in a way.
It's definitely that for her. Yeah, she's definitely so brainwashed that I do think that she thinks she's doing me a favor, but subconsciously,
yes,
she has this other drive that she doesn't really understand. But talking to me, which makes no sense because I'm not her niece,
right?
Because we're just Thetans.
You're just
so it's like confusing. Like, why is she singling me out to talk to me for hours every time? Because she's not my aunt, but acting like my aunt.
She's talking out of both sides of her mouth.
Exactly, yeah. And so it was just like kind of confusing. And there were times when I got in trouble with her when I was in Florida. It was like
for what?
So like, so it started because I was talking to this boy during course time, right? So we were like flirting, and I got in trouble for it. And there was like a thing going through that a bunch of people were getting in trouble for that. And they tried to take me off of my job and assign me to doing heavy labor. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I've already done enough heavy labor in my life. I was like, make me. And then,
don't mind if I do.
So then I wound up getting into, so they were trying to make me. And then I was trying to call my parents at the INT base. because I was like just trying to go to them for something. Like I was like, maybe they can give me some advice or something. And I was probably about like 15 at this time. And they wouldn't let me use the phone. Like I kept trying to pick up the phone and I would try to call and they would hang it up. And there wound up being like 5 people like holding me down. Like each had one leg. One was like a security guard. The other 3 were like women in the organization that I was in, and they were just like physically restraining me from calling my parents.
Mm.
And then they wound up parking someone outside my door all night, stopping me from like if I were trying to escape, even though I had nowhere to escape to. But like, so I was in trouble, and then I got pulled into an office, and I was in there, and Dave walked by, and he was like, "Are you in trouble?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he was like, "What for?" And I was like, "I got into a fight." And he was like, "Unbelievable. No more special treatment for you." And I was like, anyways, well, I was scared, but I was also like, special treatment?
Yeah.
I was like, anyways. And so then Shelly came in with 2 other, like the other most senior person on the base, and then 2 of my seniors, and basically was like, said that what I had been doing by like flirting with this boy and talking during course, it was like 1 down from having sex in an auditing session, which is like the worst thing you can do in all of Scientology.
Wait, so people would go into an auditing session and get it on?
Well, very rarely. Well, I don't even.
Only Sonny Pereira.
Oh. It's like a fetish. We're gonna go audit and fuck.
I don't think very many people did it because it was like the worst thing you can do. It's like when she said that, I was like,
We need to make a YouTube video on that. Find someone who did it. I'm in for that.
Sonny Pereira.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. So, and basically she like yelled at me for like 10 minutes in front of all these women and said that I was this close to being assigned to the RPF and that she had been a guardian angel to me. And like she showed me all of these reports, because in Scientology people write reports on each other.
mm-hmm.
Otherwise they'll get in trouble for not reporting on you. There are just all these reports on things that I had done. And she said that I was just like a disgrace to my name, and that I had to receive a confessional from the girl who was like the highest executive on the base. I had to be under full-time watch, and I had to do this one program that was kind of like where I would do certain studies, and it's a thing that you do when you're in CMO, but it basically would do the laundry of all the executives and clean all their berthing and iron all their shirts and stuff. I had to now be on that program.
Mm.
And so and that went on, and I was like, and then every week at staff meeting, I would have to get up in front of the group and say how horrible I was and like say what I was doing to fix it. And I would just get like screamed at like a million times a day and treated like crap. And I wasn't allowed to talk to any of my friends. You know, there were no days off. And so it was just like a period of like when I was in trouble. And she was, she was the one who caused that. So she did mean things as well.
Yeah.
But and she said at that time, she was like, I was the reason why the ranch was created, and that it was my fault that it all went wrong. And I didn't.
What did that mean?
So at the time I was like, huh? Like I was 6 when I went to the ranch. I was like, couldn't get over that in my mind. I was like, what a thing to say. And I didn't realize it at the time, but basically like a few weeks later, all of the kids at the ranch who were there with me, who I grew up with, showed up in Clearwater and were all put on posts there.
What?
Put on jobs. Yeah.
Just at once.
All at once. So they were shutting down the ranch because basically
the feds moved in?
I think some people were like, do you know anything about this, Aaron? There was like some German, like, I don't know, news thing that was like circling helicopters. And I think that
I thought you were going to say Colonial Dignidad or something. They were like drawing comparisons.
There was a German documentary crew who had flown a helicopter over the Int Ranch, and they had come to learn about the place where the kids of the international management executives were well, essentially being held. You know, I mean, yesterday we talked about the idea of Scientology being a human trafficking cult, and I mentioned an example of why I thought that way. But her story and the story of all the other kids is a much better explanation of how Scientology. You have kids who aren't being educated.
Oh, this is no question.
They're not being parented. They're being put to work, menial labor, hard labor. They're not being paid. They're not being cared for. And even most of her story is occurring when she is a child.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well, all of my stories, I mean, I was 21 when I left. So everything that's occurred is essentially when I was a child.
Yeah.
And so all these jobs I had were all when I was a kid. And all these kids that came over from the ranch were 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And they were put on jobs like moving counseling folders from one place to another, like being course supervisors, being auditors. They were all put on jobs and were working for the Sea Org for $50 a week and 3,000 miles away from their parents.
Yeah.
So the ranch was being disbanded. I just think that it was because it was a danger to have this many minors not being educated, and they could be put to good work. You know?
Oh, yeah. We could use their labor somewhere else for sure. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.